In this video, I talk about introverted intuition, and I'm ready to get straight to the point. Introverted intuition, what is it? Essentially, it's an intuition, right? But you got to remember, it is linked and tied with with extroverted sensing. So that means the way I look at it is it's a present form of intuition, which means that it's taking in all the different things going on in the immediate environment and it's seeing simulated ways that things could be done better in the immediate environment. Okay? So how does that play out in everyday life? It means that there'll be amazing planners. It means that they're amazing strategists. Introverted intuition is all about noticing patterns in the present environment, which allows you to be very effective in the present environment. And if you happen to see things in your present environment a lot, you'll begin to develop these intuitive ideas about how to make things better over time until eventually you come up with this amazing idea to improve the environment. That's how introverted intuition works. It's all about noticing the patterns in the environment, keeping a note of them, but unlike extroverted intuition, it's not immediately firing off ideas on what to do in that immediate environment. Instead, it's collecting, and just adding it up until it can notice the perfect move to make. It's much more precise. Now, what's the difference between introverted functions and extroverted functions? Introverted functions are more linear. They like to take their time. It's like, okay, we're here, we're at A, we're going to move to B, then we move to C, then we move to D. Extroverted functions are more so spontaneous. So it will say, okay, this is A and B, but oh wait, F is over there. Let me see F. That's more of your extroverted ways of doing things. So now let's link that to intuition. Extroverted intuition is firing off different ideas. Oh, I could try to do that. What if we try to do that? This idea would be cool. Introverted intuition is saying, okay, all that is great, but what is the best move we can make right now? You know what I mean? And because of that, it may not have all the firing, oh, let me do this, let me do that extroverted intuition has. But it does have the ability to accumulate enough information that when it does decide to create a simulated thing that it can implement in the real world, it's much more practical. Because you got to remember, it's paying attention to its immediate environment. And if an introverted intuitive has seen something enough times, that means they really have a good grasp on what to do. Because unlike extroverted intuitives, they're very present compared to extroverted intuitives. So when they decide to make a revision or to do something different or to add something different, right, in a simulated way, like maybe we could add this to it, it's much more precise and it's much more related to the immediate environment. Introverted intuitives, what are some of the characteristics that we see with introverted intuitives? Introverted intuitives they have a tunnel vision ability. So you have to imagine that if extroverted intuition is in all of these different places, introverted intuitives are very much so focused on the task at hand in different places. Now, we're not saying they're you got to remember, we have all of these functions, so everybody expresses these things differently. But as an introverted intuitive, you have the ability to lock in and focus on what it is that you want immediately or within a short amount of time. You have an ability to have this tunnel vision where you kind of don't see anything else. Introverted intuitives have that ability, and it's a very powerful ability because you have to remember, while everyone else is so focused on the physical environment with extroverted sensing or introverted sensing, the intuitive is in the environment with you, but they still have that intuition, which means they're still focused on something simulated, but it's a much more tunnel-focused view on what is it that they're seeing in a simulated way. Meaning that whatever ideas they see in their own mind, it's much more precise than the extroverted intuitive. And that's very beneficial because you'll notice with a lot of introverted intuitives, they make amazing discoveries. They make they're able to give you a lot of insight, right? But it is a kind of insight that is predicated on what it knows. Introverted intuitives are known for saying things like, if they know it, they know. If they don't know it, they're like, I don't know. They're not going to sit here and try to tell you, oh, well, maybe you can know. They're going to say, I either know it or I don't. Because the way introverted intuition works, it's like paying attention to what it knows. And it's giving a high level of attention to that to see how it can improve that. Anything outside of that scope is being missed, whether it's the sensory environment, or any outside ideas is being missed because that intuition is laser beam focused intuition. Okay. Um, what are some of the things? What are some of the pros of introverted intuition when we talk about introverted intuition? And just to go a little bit deeper with introverted intuition is all about collecting data and collecting different things in the external world. It's a very subconscious function because it's taking place as the introverted intuitive just goes about things. And then the introverted intuitive will just be like, wow, I just have this brilliant idea that came out of nowhere. And they won't realize it, but it's come from them paying attention to their outer world on a subconscious level. Like, so they're paying attention to things that are coming up, and it's almost like the art is taking place internally. Whereas for the extroverted intuitive, they're really more based on what's coming at them. The introverted intuitive is more so sucking everything into that intuition and then organizing it to see what it is that should be done to be effective. So, what are the pros of introverted intuition? Introverted intuition is one of the pros is focus, tunnel vision. It has the ability to laser in on what it really cares about, and because of that, it's able to give you a very heightened and potent amount of information from what it's accumulating. Okay, that's a huge thing about introverted intuition. What's another great thing about introverted intuition? It's able to keep its ideas and intuitive ideas organized. It's very good at linear intuition. So it takes intuition and things that it's thinking about, and it can take it from the zero and build up. That's much harder for the extroverted intuitive to do because it's so scattered. So a huge thing and I suggest to a lot of people who may be extroverted intuitives, they want to study introverted intuitives to learn how to take these ideas, these simulations, and build them up slowly to where when you finally do let people know what these intuitive ideas are, they have much more weight and girth to their ability to be effective in the real world, because they take that time to build up a case. And another big thing about introverted intuition is that it is an amazing creative function. It has an amazing ability to take things in the outer world and explain them in ways that are very realistic, because you got to remember, introverted intuition is tied to extroverted sensing. And extroverted sensing is very practical in the sense of it's dealing with what it can taste, touch, what's around it. So as an introverted intuitive, a lot of the data that you get is very based in practicality, because a lot of the time it's based on things that you've seen and things that are in your immediate environment, rather than being lost out in the ethers with just random ideas coming left and right. Now, what are the negatives of introverted intuitives? Well, as I said, it's that laser beam focus. So unlike the extroverted intuitive, you do miss a lot of things. That is a negative. You miss a lot of the things outside of your periphery or outside of your focus. And so that can be a negative because you'll be in such a tunnel mode to do this thing, you might miss all of the other ways in which you can do it. I notice introverted intuitives tend to be very much in their own world and very much in like a smaller circumference of what they're focusing on, which is very good, but that can also be a negative. Number two, introverted intuition is a type of function that is tied to extroverted sensing, which means that a lot of the time it can miss the reasons for things that are more on a level of, for example, introverted sensing is about noticing the linear things in the immediate environment. But if you have introverted intuition, you're noticing the things linearly on a simulated environment, meaning the things in your mind. But when it comes to the things in the physical world, you can be kind of clumsy. You can find yourself a little bit disassociated. You can find yourself not really understanding how people do things or why things go the way they do in the physical world, because unlike the extroverted intuitive introverted sensing loop that that those two functions have, you're tied to extroverted sensing. And to make it even more difficult, you're not even an extroverted sensing dominant, which means you're not even paying attention to everything outside of you. So you kind of find yourself as introverted intuitive in your own world of how things can be better, of these simulations I can do, of these ideas. But while you're thinking of all these things, you're kind of missing the whole world around you. And a lot of the time, that can leave introverted intuitives feeling kind of lonely, kind of separated, kind of off from the outside world, because you got to remember, as a dominant introverted intuitive, if you are, you're very disconnected and you don't even have the extroverted intuition to kind of jump around and pick up where you left off that a lot of extroverted intuitives have. So that's kind of a tough aspect And then the last thing I'll say about introverted intuition is that it is a function where it takes time. Okay, and that's where you might want to suggest to a lot of introverted intuitives to have a strong network to help speed them along, or have a good network to help throw different ideas at them. Because as an introverted intuitive, you're kind of taking things as they come at you. Remember, it's if you imagine extroverted intuition as coming up with ideas for everything around you, introverted intuition is all about sucking it in. It's almost like taking everything in and then organizing it internally. So if that's the case, you have to think about the fact that through that function of you kind of like taking everything in, it puts you in a position where you don't have as much of an array of things to work with outside of you. And it can cause you to move a little bit slower. So what I would suggest for introverted intuitives is to find a strong network so that you're not in a situation where you're just in tunnel vision mode, or where you're not just in a mode where you're moving towards just like moving too slow, essentially. You know what I mean? Now, some of the functions like ENFJs, for example, can move very fast with introverted intuition, but it's because they lead with that extroverted feeling where they're just sucking everything in, dealing with everyone, and then organizing. What you more so want to do is put yourself in a position where your network can feed you different ideas so that that introverted intuition isn't moving so slow. While it's moving linear, which is good for it's getting ideas that help say, okay, maybe I could try to add this, maybe I could try to add this, and it's able to suck in multiple things rather than just what's in its immediate environment. And that will allow it to move quicker and come up with solutions much faster with that introverted and intuitive ability. So, with that being said, introverted intuitives are very much the masterminds. They have an amazing ability to see things and put things together, but it's important that they surround themselves with people of different functions and learn from different functions so that introverted intuition can be bolstered with more information, more feedback, so that when they do come with that brilliant idea, it can hit even harder. And that's my spiel on introverted intuitives. I hope you learned a lot. We're going to talk soon.